Hi, I'm Tyra Adams.
I'm Moto Nyoka.
And you're just watching my channel. For today, we're talking about Producto Imaginarium. I should say Producto Imaginarium presents Horrible Sisters. We're talking about sisterhood in horror movies and the supernatural, and how it manifests itself. And we got a really good lineup. Today, we're doing Ginger Snaps, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Practical Magic, that fifth season, and probably beyond of Buffy, because now we have Dawn, and then also Charmed, everyone else's, everyone's favorite.
The legacy.
The legacy of Charmed.
The legacy of Charmed.
So, well, I would like to say welcome to We. How are you? Or We Moto. Sorry, I gave you a nickname without asking you if you like a nickname.
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on. This is very exciting. This is my first guest appearance on a thing.
So cool.
I'm super stoked about this. I'm noticing that my background is nowhere near as exciting as yours, and that is a note for myself to put exciting things behind me instead of just
that's because I'm extra. I'm a Pisces, so I thought about this outfit and set up first and then watch the movies.
in the outfit
it's like I want to do something with this dress. I found this at a first of all, I'm a child of the 90s, so I love
I was going to say, I'd like to give a shout out to your choker.
Yes.
It's very in tune with Practical Magic. They were rocking those, and I'm like, it's like a shout out to the film.
Yeah, I feel like part of my personality may be cemented in circa 94, where it's from there, it was it was Practical Magic, The Crow, and then The Craft. And that pretty much cemented everything with me. I was in middle school, and my parents were like, "What are you doing?" Especially as Black parents, they're like, "It's the devil." So I had to go and sneak watching Buffy and whatnot.
Aww, yeah, it's not the devil.
It's not.
TV.
It's not TV.
It's just TV.
And I didn't grow out of it. I'm still watching Xena, so I don't know what to say past that.
So it didn't work.
It didn't work at all. So
if any parents are watching, it
won't work. If it's in me, it's in me, you guys. It's in me.
It won't work.
And it wind up making me money way later in life, so we're cool. But do you want to talk about your podcast, Black Women Are Scary?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. So I've just started a podcast called Black Women Are Scary. It is a podcast that celebrates people of color writing in horror. So we only put out once a month, so we're low key about it. Once a month, the last Friday of every month is an episode. It's a short story written by an up and coming author. We do some light production around it. It's very kind of taking a page out of LeVar Burton Reads. I don't know if you've ever listened to his podcast, where he's just the one narrator, and there's some production, and it's just telling you a good story. So that's what we do. We feature a different author every month, and a different actor, and a different sound designer.
Oh, nice.
All typically people of color, and so far have been all women. Though I'm not saying that it's only for women.
Of course.
People of color writing in horror, but for some reason the only people that send me anything are women, probably because it's called Black Women Are Scary.
Yeah.
We love just anything that's here's a trope, I'm going in the opposite direction. So we challenging tropes or just ignoring them altogether is what it's all about. And usually the week after, we have a little online mixer that showcases the author. So we're still playing around on how we want to invite people. We've only had one, and we kept it invite only right now, just because we're still playing with the format, but it's super one-on-one, and we basically wanted a digital house party. So we're kind of going for that sort of vibe. So it's not about having this huge thing, You get some time to actually talk to the author, and it's a Q&A, and the author also gets to ask you questions. So it's really the goal of it was really to provide authors of color an outlet to dictate in some ways, or at least have some kind of say in how people talk about their work,
so
that it's not at the mercy of just other folks, essentially. Like they get a say of like, this is actually what I wanted to talk about. And that a lot of that stems from me just wanting to support writers, but it also stems from, I don't know if you're familiar with Bloodchild, that Octavia Butler book. It's just a bunch of her short stories.
No.
So
yeah.
Okay. So there's like a few short stories in it. And then at the end of the short story, it's Octavia talking about like what she was thinking about when she wrote this short story. And it's like never what you thought. And then even in it, she's like, yeah, a lot of people thought that I was trying to do shenanigans about race. Actually, blah, blah, blah. It was just like something else. She was like, I went to the one place and found out about this weird parasitic bug and it scared me. So I wrote a story about it. Like, it was like, so, and I'm like, yo, no one ever asked her. People just assumed, right? Like, what if like this whole time she like race had nothing to do with anything that she was right? But that's like not what she's known, you know what I mean? Like because of the lens that people look at it, you know? And Octavia wasn't necessarily dictating the conversation around her work. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being in college and having like an English, because we were supposed to take like an elective, and it was like some random elective about fantasy literature, and I was like, thank God it's this. But yeah, I remember one time the professor just said, he's like, you know, guys, sometimes a blue cup is just a blue cup. And I was like, right. Okay. He's like, sometimes the writer has that, and then it always stuck with me, because like now when I'm writing, especially because I think like in the late 2000s, especially like after George Lucas kind of did the reboot, he did the prequels, and he was always like, this was always the plan, you know. There became the cult of this is always the plan. And I think for a long time writers felt like we had to have it all figured out. And then now I feel like what's starting to happen again is that you have this new generation of writers who have gone in front and behind the camera or have been involved in production. And the reality is like, you know, sometimes a blue cup is just a blue cup. And sometimes you just have to leave that gap open for the audience, because it's a participatory, you know, the audience participates as a storyteller just as much as you do. So if you dictate every single thing, then you're cutting out our type of participation thing, you know. It's
which is why we keep these events. We're like, again, we're still experimenting, but that's why we're keeping them so small, so they can really feel like that can really happen. And I think you can lose that in big numbers. And again, we're also just I'm just trying to, even though it's called Black Women Are Scary, I am in fact trying to have a conversation that's not overwhelmed by identity politics. About, you know, authors in horror. Just that none of them happen to be white men. It's just so last Friday of every month, we're on every place that you listen to a podcast: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, all that jazz.
Awesome. So today we're talking, not to cut you off.
No, that was it.
Yeah, today we're talking about Horrible Sisters. I think I just went over. We're just going over the trope of sisterhood in horror and supernatural, particularly in movies and TV. One of the criteria we're just going to go over is just we're going to just chat about the movies, because some of them are just awesome. Just initial thoughts, and then we'll go over the sisterly bond, and then leave it out with how does it connect supernaturally. So let me just start with this question. What do you think, what makes sisters just a fascinating subject for horror and the supernatural, like in your opinion?
So when you first, you know, pitched this to me, I was like, what a great thing that I've never actually thought of as such a strong recurring trope that I just did not bother to like sit and be critical about. So I've been mulling that over, and I think it has kind of a lot to do with sexism. It is the only time that I see women speaking about legacy ever, right? Like legacy is like not ours. because it's always traced through the sons.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the only time in which legacy is traced and passed down through the daughters.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that it's in supernatural settings and in horror settings is because it's othered.
Yeah.
It's, it's like the mainstream setting is the sons. So this other genre, this other space, this supernatural, right, as in not natural, that's when you're going to talk about matriarchy and the power of matriarchy. I think it's a way of othering that and like decentering that. And I think the reason that it kind of holds that space is because people want to have like weird ideas about it. Like we don't understand matriarchy as a culture, and it's kind of been it's been demonized.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess I can say that. I mean, it's been demonized. So of course, when we talk about demons, we're going to talk about like sisters and mothers and daughters, and like the bloodline and legacy and tradition that's passed down through women. I think it kind of shows like, because so much of horror is through a male lens, it does show this like real lack of understanding and fear and like kind of like strange fetishism around matriarchy, where it's like, oh, we just don't get how it works, so we're gonna assign it all this like supernatural stuff. And I'm like, actually it's kind of boring, but like so and then like we've been fed that, and so I think in a way we also kind of believe it, like we also kind of think that we're magic. But I really do think that it stems back from like back in the day when like people didn't understand periods or stuff, and they're like, we have to go in a hut because they're dangerous right now. And it's like, I don't think that's true, but like you just don't get what's going on. And that like sense of mystery and then magic has like stayed with us. Now I don't know, maybe we are magic and matriarchy is magical, and I
feel we are
wrong.
I'll claim
what I'm saying? Like, so like I don't know if it's like a chicken or the egg. Is it because we've been told this so much that it's true, or we've been told this so much because it was true at one point and somebody was like, hey, look at her, but I think that that's the like appeal of it, you know what I mean? We know so much about patriarchy, we don't know anything about matriarchy, and so there's like this space to like dream and invent things and have it be magical.
Oh, absolutely. I just want to touch on what you said before, just because things have just been so separate, and like the history of things. Like I can't remember the genesis of this idea, but I think it was like some other horror movie that had come out again, and it was like some pair of sisters, and I was like, hey, there's a lot of sisters in this. But to touch on like things being passed on from mother to daughter, that's true. Like historically, like traditionally, as far as like folklore and folk life, it is passed down through the mothers, because you know there's so much, they're with the children all the time. And then if you have, grandparents, while like, let's say mom is like out and about and, you have this type of peasant life, then you have older women, taking care of younger children. And then you have like all these stories and traditions. And what I found, like just reading because that's my jam, just reading folklore and all different types of things. And even like falling in love with Celtic and Nordic folklore, and running into a YouTube video by a professor who was like, you have to remember, and he said this because people were like, well, isn't this exactly what happened? This is what Thor did, and this is what Loki did. And he had to say, you have to remember that the Nordic people and the Celtic people are not one people, and then you have this game of telephone through the generations, as one person has been telling this other story, and maybe they go over to the next village or the next the Vikings are marauding, so then they tell the story and they have their own version of the story. And then you get to like Christian monks, and then they write it down, but they color it with their own religion. And then you have this extra layer, because you have a man and he's Christian, anything to deal with woman stuff, he's already taken it down and being like, well, that's not important. And what we're finding now, especially because we have more women getting back into academia and life and talking about folklore, which is a very feminine thing, you have to realize there's what's called women's work. And he's like, I want you to recognize this definition, that just because it's women's work or women's business doesn't mean that it's less than. It's just that this was passed down to mother to daughter. And now we're starting to realize as a society, there's value to that. And of course, at one point in time, they just all chuck that away. So some of these goddesses were only explaining to like from mother to daughter, and then you would go in a red tent during your period, and while guys made up an excuse, it's like they're unclean, they were actually like having fun and some stuff. You know, they're doing their woman thing, and it's like you didn't know what that was, so you had to come to this conclusion, oh, they're unclean, or this is what's happening, where that tradition is kind of broken and lost amongst, you know, other women, you know. So just to touch on that, like sometimes it's like what's been the baby that's been thrown out with the bathwater, you know, a little bit. And I think that tradition is still there in a modern sense, you know, as we tell modern day campfire stories, like about women's work, what pops up and different bonds that pop up.
Yeah, like what stays, what remains. Like you notice, like, wow, we can't seem to get away from this whole sisterhood thing.
Yeah.
And I also wonder, like, during that time when, you know, we always kind of harken back to a time that's like I feel like the going narrative is that there was a time before patriarchy, and it's just kind of like blank, like no one knows what's happened. And we're like, it was a matriarchy, we say, we don't know. Or maybe we do know, but we don't really even know how that like worked or what that looked like.
Yeah.
And we don't know how men were in it. And so I do also think that that's part of, like now that I see women stepping into writing roles and stepping into directing roles, and you really get to see things from like a female gaze, men are also different in it. Like men are a little more expansive. They do, their relationships and their characters are just, there's more going on.
Yeah.
Because women aren't necessarily gonna lean always to like uphold like macho-ness. Like we're not as concerned, right? I mean, whenever I write about, I'm like, I don't really care about that. I write about like men that I've known, and they're interested in complex, and they have contradictions. It's like, these are the kind of people that I want to see. Like I don't give a crap about this one-dimensional type of dude. And so I also kind of feel like that's part of this, that's also part of things that like, or the appeal of the sisterhood and matriarchal lines and things passed on between women, is that it kind of, like I said, it's a sort of dream space, since we don't know. Everybody kind of gets to be how they wish they were, or something, how they're not usually. Like, you can uphold tropes in that space, or you could abandon them. It could give you that excuse. And I think that's why we can't seem to move away from it. I also think that maybe if you believe in like blood memory, perhaps we're all just trying to remember what it was like before we just got ourselves into this big fat mess.
Yeah. We can very well be doing that.
And that could be what it is.
So
we're telling these stories over and over again because we're like, how did it go? I think it was good. It was better than this. I'm pretty sure. So that might be it.
That exactly might be it. So let's get started with Ginger Snaps with our two sisters, Ginger and Bridget. Was that your first time watching it, or
yes, yes, it was. I did not know what this movie was, and I can't believe I missed it. I was like, how was I not inhaling this when it came out? I am so glad that you were like, you have to watch this movie. We're absolutely talking about it. That was such a joyful Sunday afternoon.
Oh, nice.
Watching this film and going in blind, like I didn't know anything. And I was like, this is excellent. And it's the dude who made Orphan Black. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I found that later as well. Like, for me, Ginger Snaps, I think I caught it maybe a couple of... Ginger Snaps is one of those things because it was not a hit when it first came out, and it was kind of
weird. Wasn't? Because it was like dark and
I feel
unsettling.
Like, it was. Like, even in my research in this, like some of the reviews, you could tell people just felt uncomfortable, and I see why in certain ways. It came out like 97, 98, and then it was also an indie film, and then it was also foreign. So unless you know, it's different like the internet was just like a new thing coming up like at the time. To think like we didn't have the internet and it's just like word of mouth. And you know, I'm trying to think of 97.
Yeah, you still had to call the internet then, didn't you?
Yeah, I remember that. Like I remember that because like yelling at people like, get off the phone.
Yeah.
For you youngins who don't understand, like not understanding, like it was one or the two. You're either talking on the phone or you're on the internet. You could not do both. And like, but I think it's
Singularity
also like
had not happened.
Yeah, I think it was just the timing. But thankfully, I think as things started going, because when I saw it on, it wasn't the Sundance Channel. I think when IFC, before they got their own little theater, like when it was a natural channel, I think I caught it like hella early in the morning and like caught the tail end of it, and then they played it again like some other time and I watched the full thing out. So like the first time I watched it, Ginger had already transformed, and then like later on I watched the whole thing. And like sitting through this a second time, it was really, really funny. I think it was just better inside my head in certain ways. Because I definitely identified with Ginger and Bridget at the time. And it's not that I'm completely different. I mean, like, obviously. But like, I think I get much more somewhat of the humor that's being played out in it, because it goes so hard with the emo. Like Bridget's face is just like this the whole time. There's no reason to have like there's not enough goth in the world to have your face like that. But I think at the time, because I was feeling like that, she made sense. Now as an adult where I can like flow and got, you know, I'll wear black, but at the same time, I don't need to be like hide from the world. It's like, what are you doing? But I think that's part of, I think the actors are definitely taking it seriously and they were told to do that. But I think as far as the director, I think, because I think it's, you know, I think they were directed that way. Like it's very much Canadian humor, or that Canadian black humor.
No, it was funny. I thought it was like meant. I laughed.
It was funny. It's hilarious. It's definitely meant for you to laugh. There's just certain points. So it's like, how am I agreeing, like after that like presentation, how am I agreeing with the teacher now? Like just having that moment of like seeing all of that, feeling like, okay, girls, do you want to chat about that photo project you just did? You know, because they're like, it's all gory and they're like various poses of like, you know, death and you're like, what?
Yeah. I loved it because I work with young folks, and I was like, this is one of the few films where the teenage girls are written like teenage girls. Yeah. I'm like, they're morbid, they're kind of mean, they're a little bit scary, and I'm like, yep, that's a 16-year-old. Like, you know what I mean? It's also one of the few films where girls talk about like bleeding and blood and periods and masturbation in a way that's very like frank, and it's not it didn't feel presentational, like they were trying to turn anybody on. Like when she was like, I feel myself changing, and it's like when you touch it, she attributed killing with masturbating and having an orgasm.
Yeah.
Well, and like the language that was around that, I was like, that's not like so that you are excited about some 16-year-old. It's not like a little like fetish kind of thing. Like she's really telling you like, this is what it feels like. It feels so good. And it's like scary. And it was also the first time that and one of the few times, I can't even think of another film where they're just that frank and honest about it. Like there was no airs about any of it. It's also rare that you see a movie where women are the werewolves, which is a gripe that I have. And I was super excited that this was a werewolf story, because I'm always looking for werewolf stories, because I feel like they don't get enough movies. Everybody loves vampires and they're not that cool. And like, I'm kind of team werewolf. I'm kind of team werewolf. And like, I just feel like they don't get enough. I'm just like, if, you know, like advocate for good werewolf movies. And also most of the time when you speak about werewolves, it's, again, they're men, and it doesn't make any sense because it's one of the few creatures that is ruled by the moon.
Yeah,
So I feel
I've
like it
always
writes.
said. Yeah,
I'm like, why are there any men in any of these movies?
Yeah, in my story, like I did a short film and working to expand it into a TV series, Conjure. Like there's werewolves in there, and they are inherently female. I was like, wait a minute, werewolves would be inherently female. Like we change once a month, we travel in packs.
I'm like, it's so obvious that it would be stereotypical, and so I've never really gotten like why so many werewolf movies are male centered. I'm like,
because I think
so she's ruled by the moon, turning once a month, and it's like this beast inside of you, and you've got heightened senses.
It makes sense. Like I know during my period, I feel like a werewolf. Like I totally can feel like I totally changed, and that transformation bodily can feel like that, which I think was great for a teenage girl. Like because it's essentially about puberty and getting your period. Like it's reading articles from that time to research for this, like, and because they're all male critics and they're talking about how much blood it is, and they're like how it's super obvious about this like it's about the period, but why is he being so gross about it? And it's like, because that's how you feel, especially as a teenage girl. Like it's all gender,
especially when you first get it.
Yes,
it's gross. Okay, like your body doesn't know what it's doing. It's not regular yet. Like you're all over the place.
Hormonally and like emotionally, you're literally turning into a werewolf. Like we all remember where we were when we got ours, and like I love how like seeing as an adult now, looking how it's all from like the because it's from the teenage girl point of view, like how the grown-ups are, from like the mother being like the grown-ups are in some other different type of movie, like it's some weird Pleasantville type movie. So like the mother is just waiting for her girls to get her period and she's uber happy, and then and showing that disconnect emotionally. So even though like that, that's the type of mother, she made Ginger a cake when she got her period, but like she would have thrown like a moon party, like I kind of want to do for my daughter, but like but
now you know how not cool she's gonna think it is.
Not like mother, like I'll buy my own tampons and everything. But my mom was very much like we called my aunt on the phone. It was just like a very much woman day.
Yeah.
But I could imagine with these two sisters feeling like they should handle this on their own. And even now going through problems and like going to the doctor, like how she tries to go to the school nurse, even though they're talking about something else. That conversation, I feel like a lot of women have had with their doctors when they're trying to explain that something is wrong with my body, and they're just going to the go-to, no, this is how it is. This is how your period is. And she's like, no, it's like a geyser full of blood. And she's like, well, of course it could feel that way. It's like, no, maybe check that out. Like when someone says a geyser full of blood, and
it's a very gendered film.
Yes.
Right? Like they're all alone, and I love that they're not happy about it. I love that. Like they're not like, this is great, now I'm a woman. They're like they're well aware of what it means, and they have a very cynical view of womanhood and what it means. I love that there was this real sense of like, we want to be girls forever type of thing, like a kind of Peter Pan. Oh wow, look at that. Oh, like a kind of, it was just like, you were like, and it lit up behind you. So you don't really see that a lot, where like girls are really embracing girlhood and like it's fantastic, and growing up, like they're not like all ready to be women. So it kind of destroys that whole idea that like, oh yeah, no, we're so ready for that. And just this whole idea that like, because we're more mature and we're more this and we're more that. And it's like, they just like break through all that. Like, they were like, we're having a great time, and this whole thing happening to us really sucks.
Yeah, it sucks.
Because it's going to be this responsibility and this energy that I don't want to deal with. Like they understood that like more male attention was going to come, and they're like, we really don't want it. Like, we're
Yeah,
really
they don't
having a
want,
great time.
yeah, they don't want the male attention. They don't want the responsibility. They don't want to be like their mother and how they see that life. Like, I like how suburban
Yeah.
everything is. Like, it is, every house is every major house, and you know they're the same. It's cookie cutter. Their parents seem to have some type of religion. You know, it's exactly how as a teenage girl you're looking at your parents' relationship and can't imagine, you know, anything sexual or anything. You're just looking at your parents like, I don't want to be them, you know, like when you turn a teenager. I think I have definitely a lot of compassion now as an adult. It's like, no, that wasn't totally happening. But when you're a young girl on the verge of womanhood, looking at your mother like you want to be different, and which I like, because then the mother, which is a very like black comedy type deal, when she realizes like something has hit the fan, and she's like, yeah, we could just leave, we could burn the house. She's very super,
so calmly she's like, I'm just gonna burn down the house and then we'll go and we'll leave. They're like, what about dad? She's like, he won't understand.
He'll just blame me.
I do like that the mother seemed to be more, in the end she really did seem to be more than they gave her credit for, and I dug that. And I almost wish there was more time and she was able to like come back, you know, because I felt like, I don't know, there was more. I got really curious about her there at the end once she found the body and was like, all right, get in. So here's the plan. I was like, you're not who I thought you were, and that's really exciting. So that was like a pleasant little thing. But then there's also just like, she turned into a werewolf and she was ugly. And I really dug that. There's some werewolf movies where I feel like the woman turns into a werewolf and she just kind of looks like a poodle. And I dug that, like,
something still hot you want to have sex with, and that's not the case.
And I dug that she looked like a beast and was like genuinely scary. And I even though like there's a lot of, you know, things about womanhood and puberty and coming of age and blood and periods, I do feel at the end of the day that this was a movie about like a bad sister relationship. Like, they kind of had a toxic
it was it was like very codependent. They needed the movie starts out, you know, in a very funny way, because there's been like an attack and this woman is coming out it's like a full horror movie like thing, and talking about kids versus adults. Like, this adult woman is freaking out that she's found the body of her dog in her yard. And like the kids look up for a moment and then they just like turn away and go, you know,
back to street hockey. It was like street hockey, right?
Back to being kids. And that's exactly like, that's not something I need to concern myself about. And that very next scene is Ginger and Bridget talking about this suicide pact that they made when they were 8, you know, and seeing that dynamic, to me, it sets up the whole film, because Ginger is very much, no, we made this pact, and I wrote it down. It's like, out by 16 or dead on the scene, together forever, united against life as we know it. And it's like, okay, you made that when you were 8, which someone should have talked to you about. But you made it when you're 8. Now you're almost 16. It's 8 years later. You still don't want to be adults, and you're ready to take yourself, you know, out of the equation. And it's like, but it's majorly because Ginger is setting this tab of what to do, and Bridget is reluctant, but she still makes the pact. And then all of it starts happening as Ginger moves away, and Bridget doesn't want that to happen. She wants things to stay the same. But, you know, here Ginger is, you know, she's bitten by a werewolf, but it becomes much more. It becomes about her different, like, Ginger is sexual and she's going out with guys and she has a period. So it's like this, you know, as they begin symbiotic or sleeping next to each other in the same room, which they don't have to do because they have this huge house, to now my sister is becoming alien and different to me. Like, it almost doesn't matter that it's a werewolf story at certain points. So what did you think about that? As we talk about this particular sisterly bond that is very codependent and symbiotic.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, because they moved away pretty early in the film from the whole idea of silver bullets or anything like that. The one character even says that, and he was like, "This is a virus." So, and they were always in biology class learning about viruses and the way it, attacks the host, breaks down its cells until all there is the virus. It consumes the host, right? Which is then the metaphor throughout the whole film. The virus that she catches consumes her in the same way that Ginger was trying to consume Bridget, right?
Yeah.
It's like the virus is a metaphor for their dynamic, which is, and it comes to a head when she was like, "You want to destroy everything that I've got that's not about you," is what Bridget said. When she infects herself, like she actually infects herself. And at the end it really has to come down to her separating and being an individual.
Yeah.
I'm not going to die with you. She could have I think maybe she could have saved her. She had the knife and the needle, but she ended up using the knife and not the needle.
Yeah, I think because she only had one, and the dude had died. I don't know. He taught her. I mean, she could have figured it out before things changed. The antidote. I think, when a director has like a gimme point, it was like, yeah, this needs to be. It was more about the decision point than anything else, because you're like, yeah, she could have totally gave her that cure, and then made some more, right?
But she was far gone. I feel like what she was, her sister said, like, "I'm not coming back." There was a moment where she attacks her. It gets really violent, where it's just kind of like, "You're with me or I'm going to eat you."
Yeah. Definitely.
It's like, you have to be like me. You can't be yourself, like what Ginger was doing. So she was kind of like the virus manifest, like their relationship. That dynamic, like you said, it was set up from the top, and it just kind of gets exacerbated by this werewolf thing, which like you said, is like almost secondary, because this might have happened between them anyway, since their relationship was already that. As for like, why is it sisters? I think, again, there's just like this familial bond. Like, you'll put up with that from somebody that's family versus like someone that isn't. If you're in a relationship like that, you can walk away if you're not related to them, but you can't. There was this real sense of desperation because they were sisters. Like, Bridget was all Ginger had, and Ginger was all Bridget had. And she was like, I would never leave you here. I mean, whether they had they didn't have a horrible life. They were teenagers and they just thought it was bad. But like, they were just emotional. Yeah. But they really hated being there. They really felt like they didn't belong, and they really only had each other.
Yeah. Like, if they really sat down and thought about it, they could have saved up and just moved to New York. Like, it's fine. You'd have met everyone like you.
I mean, if they were healthy,
across the border, in a healthy way. But like, sometimes we find that with siblings, the younger siblings always doing with the older siblings, especially when they seem to be like, they are stair steps, because Ginger is 16 and then Bridget is only 15. So they're a year apart. So their mother always put them together. Like, you see like the photos on the wall, and there's no separate pictures. They were always together.
Yeah.
And I think that was really, like, now that I'm saying that out loud, that was really symbiotic, symbolism is the big word I'm trying to use. The symbolism of them never having a separate picture apart, is really important. And even as they develop like the different boyfriends or who they're attracted to, like, what's his name?
Yeah.
You have like
that's very different.
From Ginger being, I don't think she was hypersexual. It's like how, like, we never talk about teenage sexuality, and that, and Ginger obviously is the more outgoing one, and she, even as before the werewolf fight, and Ginger is almost inviting that attention, and Bridget is like, oh, that's gross. because she doesn't want her to change, and she doesn't want that attention. And you can see that Ginger kind of does, and she thinks he's cute, and why not? Just with like protections, like, dude, you should go with it, but like not that particular dude, because he was doing it to tell everybody. And then
that dude was gross.
Yeah, that dude was gross. Like some
I
other
didn't like
dude.
that dude at all.
Yeah, some other dude. I'm not saying save it for marriage, but some other dude that's not going to snitch, and it's being gross.
But I do think that
mm-hmm.
that scene, where he was kind of trying to aggress her, mm-hmm. and she was like, "You lay down and relax."
Yeah,
and then I thought that was interesting, and I thought it was also interesting that like she really forces herself on him. Like,
yeah, I thought he was going to freak out.
Scared for a minute. He was like, "Ah!" And then the next day, he's got bruises all over him, mm-hmm. and he's like, "Yeah, Ginger rocked my world." And I'm like, actually, I think you were assaulted, and no one's having a conversation with you about consent because you're a boy. Yeah. And so I kind of dug like him pretending like he liked it, mm-hmm. after I saw a scene where he looked genuinely panicked.
He does. He like if he could have gotten out of that car, he would have. But
I'm like, I don't think you actually enjoyed any of that.
No. But boys, speaking to different narratives, boys aren't taught that. And that's something that, when we're talking about consent, I think people don't realize you could talk about it both ways, because that was not a consenting situation. Like,
no, he like screamed.
Yes.
He actually was like, ah, stop! Like, I think he actually said stop. And then I was like, I think you just raped him. What's going on? And then he like comes back and he looks like messed up, and I'm like, dude, it's not supposed to be like that. Yes. Unless there's like a safe word involved. I don't think you're supposed to have a black eye.
Yeah.
So, that I thought that was interesting as well, that like, mm-hmm. then when he started to change, what happened to him, mm-hmm. In that there was like this like side plot of like, oh, by the way, I caught it and you gave me this thing. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't go to Ginger, which I thought was interesting. He approached Bridget. And he was like, what did your, so I do think that like the power shift as mm-hmm. she became less human, mm-hmm. Bridget actually kind of became the older sister.
Yeah, she does. Like she
take care of her, clean up after her, that mm-hmm. kind of thing.
Figuring things out, like she's the one that figures out, like she does all the research. I think, is it Alan, the dude that, they have a cute little relationship. You don't realize as a teen that's you learning how to date, right? It's very awkward, but at the same time, I could totally, that could happen to me now. Like, what are you looking at? And it's because a guy likes you. But yeah, she goes to him. They figure out the antidote. There's all like Bridget is driving the rescue, and yeah. And whether Ginger goes back and forth to this is fun to this is not fun, I think ultimately, it is, it's not fun, No,
I enjoyed the moments where she would acknowledge her change, mm-hmm. and was scared, like those times when she tried to like cut off her tail because she was just like, mm-hmm. She fought it. She did fight it for as long as she could. Mm-hmm. And then she just kind of gave into it because it got to be too much.
Yeah. The hunger is too much.
The hunger is too much. That movie was good.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Hunger in a long time. I feel like I saw some post about it.
I don't think I've ever seen that. That's a vampire movie though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very 80s. It's just, everyone's beautiful. The Hunger is it might as well be an art film.
Sorry,
it really. No worries. The Hunger might as well be an art film, really. Like, now looking at it, sometimes I wonder if I could have been in that generation where I could just see something like this and I would have been like, oh, art. But like, it's Catherine Deneuve, David Bowie.
Oh, Catherine Deneuve.
Yes, wow. David Bowie.
Yeah, that's art.
A young baby, Susan Sarandon. It's 80s to the 90s. They have like Soho loft apartments, like the type of the type of apartment I thought like as a grown up I would have, and like everything's just very chic, and they're fabulous, and they're vampires, and it's about like, oh, I don't want to be a vampire, brooding vampire stuff. I don't want to be a vampire. Okay. Yeah, and just be told like it is one of those movies where oh, this is kind of gross. It's not like Dracula where you get to bang someone forever. It's like, please don't bite me, or maybe I do.
Yeah.
It studies that just because of like what happens to people, because I don't want to ruin that for you. Like, but The Hunger is worth checking out. But know that it's very 80s, and the soundtrack is
okay.
You gotta send,
well, if David Bowie's in it and on it, then I'm down.
Yeah, like it's worth checking out, and you gotta like a Baby Susan Sarandon.